If one thing is true about SharePoint, it is that you have a lot of different ways that you can customize it. There are a whole bunch of end user and power user tools that you can use to build pretty interesting mashup style solutions without writing any code whatsoever. And the building blocks for these are things like list views and web parts and SharePoint Designer workflows and Access services, or even Microsoft Access itself, the client, and InfoPath, although I don't recommend that people make big investments in InfoPath at this point. If you are a developer, you can also do solution development. And solution development comes in 3 flavors. Farm development, which deploys files directly to the SharePoint farm. So the sandbox development, which puts the solution into a sandbox. And then finally the new app model, which allows you to customize SharePoint without running any custom code on the server whatsoever. But whether you are an end user, a power user, or a developer, you should be comfortable with the types of solutions that end users and power users can build because they are very good for spot solutions. Not everything requires Visual Studio. There are some disadvantages to these approaches. They can be difficult to move from place to place, and they can be hard to version. But that's why they're good for spot solutions. The little solution that one person needs, these can be awesome. Primary tools for these are the browser, first and foremost, SharePoint itself, followed by SharePoint Designer and Microsoft Office. All right, so what we're going to do is create a very simple mashup application, which is going to use a contacts list and Microsoft Outlook and Word and a template in Word to create a simple little invoicing solution. So I've got a SharePoint team site that I created previously. And so I'm going to open that up. And to this team site, I'm going to add a new contacts list. By clicking Add an App. So we'll add contacts. And we'll call this customers. So I'm going to add a couple of customers to this. I'm not going to give them both the same last name customer because it'll make it hard for me to tell the difference between the two. And once I've got these guys in here, I could even connect this to Microsoft Outlook. And then use this as my primary mechanism for editing information about these customers if I want. So I've got these in here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new document library. So I'm going to click Add an App here, and I'm going to choose Document Library. And the name of this document library is going to be Invoices. And I'll choose Create. Okay, so since these are going to be invoices, I need some invoice-like columns. So I'm going to go to the Library tab here and choose Quick Edit. It gives me a nice, easy way to add columns. So the first one that we're going to add is going to be a lookup to our customer table. So I'm going to call this Customer, and this is a lookup to customers, and it's going to display last name. I'll choose OK. And then we will add a new one. This one's going to be some currency. And we'll say that this is going to be the amount of the invoice. And then maybe we'll add another one, which is going to be the due date. I meant to rename that. So due date. Okay, so we've got this set up, and what we need now is a cool invoice template in Microsoft Word. So I'm going to stop editing this list, and I'm not going to actually create a cool template. I'm going to create a very basic one just to give you an idea of what is possible. So I'm going to go into Library Settings, and I'm going to go to the Advanced Settings link on the List Settings page. And here we see that we have a document template, which is Invoices Forms Template.docx. So I'm just going to click Edit Template here, and this is going to open up in Microsoft Word. All right, so we're going to edit this. And I get rid of the navigation pane here. And what I want to do is actually tie this to some of the columns that I just created. So I'm going to come over here to Insert, and before I do this, we'll say this is going to be what? Customer and amount and due date. And then here at the end of customer, we're going to insert a quick part. So this is going to be a document property, and the one that we're going to insert is customer. And then for amount, we'll do it again. And this one is going to be amount. And then, of course, for due date, we'll do it again. And this is going to be due date. All right, so let's save this. And this is a little bug that I've noticed. So I'm going to say that I want to combine my changes. And it wasn't really changed. I don't know what the story with this particular issue is, but I just need to reject the change and then save it again. And then close Office. Now if we come back over to our invoices list, and I come up here to Files and choose New Document, it's going to open up in Microsoft Word, so I need to enable editing. And now I can fill in my document properties. So I'll say this is some invoice. And the customer, oh, check it out. There's customer 1 and there's other customer. And when I select that, it filled it in right there in the bottom. Of course, I could come here in the bottom and fill it in, and it will match up to the top. And then we could set a due date, say it's due on that particular day there, and then save it. And this is another little bug in Word. I'm hoping that there'll be an update for this soon enough. But when I close this and refresh it, invoice 1, customer $500, due on January 8th. All right, so pretty cool. Not a line of code was written there, and I have built a very effective little business application. Now, in that demo that I just did, I added a couple of columns to the invoices library. And a column is just a single piece of information. They're also known as fields and as document properties. So when I was in Microsoft Word, they displayed as properties of the document. We can define columns centrally, and when we do, they're called site columns. And for the most part, we want to stick to site columns. And the reason for this is because if we decide that we want to change the definition of something, but we defined it manually in more than one list, then we've got to find each one of those lists. Furthermore, the search appliance is not going to be able to recognize that those two fields with the same name are actually the same piece of information if they are defined each time inside of the list or library. So we need those to be defined centrally as site columns. That's really easy to do. Let me show you how. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the site settings page, And here on the site settings page under Galleries, there is a section called Site Columns. And if I click this, we will see all sorts of columns that are available to us on a team site by default. And these are called the core collaboration columns. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new one. So we'll call this column Fruits. And this is going to be a choice of delicious fruits to choose from. I could give it a description as well, but I'll leave that blank. And a good practice is to always have them in a group that you give them meaningful names so that you can spot your custom columns. So we'll call this Demo Columns, because that's what we're doing here today is a demo. And then I need to specify some fruits. So we'll say we got apples, oranges, and pears. And we can show these as drop-down menus or radio buttons or checkboxes. And I'm going to say that the default choice here is apples. That's good enough, and I'll choose OK. Now, if I go to the Show Group drop-down here, I can find Demo Columns, and it will show me that I've got a column called Fruits that has choices. So once I've got a column, I can use it anywhere I want. I could go into the Invoices list, for example, and go to the Library Settings page. And down here at the bottom, there is a choice called Add from Existing Site Columns. So if I choose this, I can find my demo columns and add in the fruits and choose OK to add it to the default view. And then I could do the exact same thing over here under my contacts. And now, if I were to do a search, once the crawler has had a chance to run, and if I had filled these pieces of information in, and it found things that matched my search across these stores, one being the Invoices library and the other one being the customers list, I would get Fruits as a potential refiner for those. And just so you can see what the choice column looks like. Well, there it is. And if I had chosen radio buttons or checkboxes, then of course that's the control that I would get. So who knows, maybe what we sell are fruits, and now we have invoice one, which is for a customer for $500, and they bought some fruits. If we want to actually model some piece of information like an invoice, we need to define a content type. And a content type is a collection of columns that define types of items. So out of the box, we have a document content type, and document content type gets extended to define pictures, which are types of documents. And we also have a contact content type. We need to define our content types centrally for the same reasons that we need to define columns centrally, which is that it avoids having two things of the same type that SharePoint can't actually recognize as the same type because they were defined manually in more than one place. And it also gives us consistency. Once we have content types defined centrally as site content types, then we can associate those with individual lists as needed. All right, so let's do that. All right, so I'm going to go into my site settings page, and under the Web Designer Galleries heading, there is a gallery for site content types. And there are a bunch of content types available to me right out of the box. And some of these are documents, some of these are core collaboration things. For example, if we take a look at the audio content type, we can see that this is based on item, and then in turn based on document, and then finally based on rich media asset, and then it adds these additional columns to it. So this is a rich media asset, which is a document, which is also a kind of item. And this demonstrates that content types are hierarchical. So if I go back over here to Site Content Types and choose Create, we'll say we're going to call this one My Audio File. just for lack of a better name, and I can select its parent. So this is going to be based on a digital asset content type and audio, which is what we just looked at. And I'm going to put this in its own group called My Types. And when I choose OK, I get all of the columns that belonged to the parent. And I can add either from existing site columns or from new site columns. And so we'll choose add from existing site columns and say that we are interested in the billing information for whatever this is. I don't know, maybe we bought it. And I'll choose OK. And now I have a new type of audio file that also has billing information. Now, sometimes I may actually create content types that do not have new fields that their parents don't have, just for the purposes of taxonomy and classification. Once I have a content type, it doesn't do me any good until I actually attach it to a list or a library of some sort. At this point, we have the potential for a piece of information defined as my audio file, but we don't have any actual my audio files. So the first thing that we need to do is actually make a bucket for those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new app, and we'll say these are my audio files. And I'll choose Create. And then I can open up that library and go to the Library tab on the ribbon and choose Library Settings. And there's a little trick that I need to do to make this possible, which is I need to go into Advanced Settings and choose Allow Management of Content Types. And once I do that, a new section appears here, which is Content Types, and I can choose Add from Existing Site Content Types, find my group, which is My Types, and then add in my audio file. And now we see it there. Now say I don't want anything other than my audio files to be in this library. I don't want documents. At the point where there's a second one in here, I can change the new button order and default content type and just uncheck document. Once I've done that, I can also come in here and delete that content type from the library. Now, I would need to continue to edit this list, probably, because I'm going to want to see more than just the name of the document and who modified it. So, we'll pretend that I'm checking all these, but instead we will just check the length in seconds for this audio file and choose OK. And now I see that in my list of possible columns. So if I were to add a document to this library at this point, which I'm not going to do, I now have all of these properties available to me that would describe it as a content type of my audio file. If I use that content type in another list or another library, then the SharePoint search is going to recognize that those things are like pieces of information and give me appropriate refiners when I do searches. One of the most powerful things about lists and libraries is the ability to define views on the data. And a view lets you display list items in varying formats. So you can specify the columns that you want to display in the view and the sort order, and specify different filters and an item limit, how many are going to appear on a page, and actually much, much more. Banding and different formatting, settings for mobile views, all kinds of good stuff. If you want to create a new view, the easiest way is to create and manage those from the ribbon on the List Tools tab. But once you've got them defined, one of the big improvements, I think, in SharePoint 2013 over 2010 is that you can now navigate between views in the List View web part without having to go up to the ribbon. They don't display as tabs, but it's basically a tab-style interface with different headings. So let me show you how this works using an invoices library that I created previously. What we're going to do is we're going to create a view to show us the past due invoices. Okay, so here we have a document library called Invoices. This document library has a special document template that I created. It lets us define invoices with a customer, which is a lookup to a customer's list, an amount, a due date, and then this other column called fruits. Now, the key thing for this demonstration is the due date. So I want to show the past due invoices. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here to the Library tab on the ribbon. Alternatively, I could do this here. And I'm going to choose Create View, which is the same button that was up there on the ribbon. All right, and so I'm going to start from an existing view, which is All Documents. And I'm starting from that because it displays the columns that I want to see. And we're going to call this Past Due Invoices. Well, we'll just leave it called Past Due. And this is going to be a public view, which means everybody is going to see it, although it is possible, given a particular setup, to create personalized views that only you see. All right, so I'm going to scroll down, and what I want to do is sort this by the due date, and then I want to filter it also by the due date, and I want to say where the due date is less than, and I'm going to pass in this little special token, which is referred to over here in the filter instructions, called Today. And here are some of the other options that I've got available to me. I can do grouping and totaling, and there's some styles that are available. But I'm going to ignore all of those and just click OK and let this get created. And now you can see that I have another little tab up here. So if I go to All Documents, I see all of my documents. And if I go to Past Due, then I see my past due invoice. All right, so this is incredibly easy to do, but very powerful when you're building spot solutions. And this is also a good skill to have when you're doing real development with Visual Studio, because we can then use other tools to pull out the underlying query that makes this all happen. Sometimes you might create a spot solution that has a nicely configured list or library that is very useful within your business or your department, and you'd like to share that with your friends. Or maybe it's a bad one and you'd like to share it with your enemies. Either way, you have the ability to save a list as a template through the browser. And so what you do is you create a template from a list for reuse. And once you've created that template, you can trade it around, and people can select it when they go to add a new app. When you save a list as a template, it goes into a special library called the List Template Gallery. And from there, you can actually download it and upload it into other sites. Like I said, the template appears whenever you add an app once the template has been put into the List Template Gallery. And this is best for one-off situations. You don't really want to get in the habit of building lots and lots of list templates if you have any alternative, because it's just not as robust as a full-featured solution approach. You know, that said, if you need something that needs to be done in an hour or two that one or two people are going to use, then this is a much better solution than actually opening up Visual Studio and going nuts and creating a list template from scratch. So like I said, there are more robust options for developers, but even if you're a developer, you have to ask yourself for a particular scenario in your department if you need robustness or not. And if you don't, then saving a list as a template is a great way to go. Okay, so let's do that now. Okay, so here we have our invoices library, and our invoices library has got a nice little invoice template in it, and it works really nice. My friend in the next department saw it, said, "I really like that, could I have it?" And I say, sure, you can have that. So what I would do is I would go to the Library tab on the ribbon, and then go into Library Settings. And then under Permissions and Management, there's a link that says Save Document Library as Template. So we'll put this in a file name called Invoice Template. And we'll say the name of this app is going to be Invoices. And we could give it a description, but I typed too slowly to do that. And then finally, just for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to also include the content. So whenever this gets created, there'll be those two invoices that you saw just a second ago. All right, so I'll choose OK. And it happens really, really fast. And once it's done, I can go to the List Template Gallery and see that I have my invoice template. All right. To use this is simple. I just need to go to Add an App. And I'm going to search for INV, and there is the new Invoices app, which is a special list template. So I'll select this, and I'll call this one Invoices 2, and choose Create. And now, if we go to Invoices 2, check it out. It's just like the list that I saved as a template, and it has the same content because I saved the content. Sometimes we will have an entire site that is worth reusing in other situations. In these situations, we want to use the site as a template as opposed to an individual list. And this would happen anytime we had more than one list working together to create a simple business solution, or perhaps some workflows that we created in SharePoint Designer. So if you're using a team site, you can save a site as a template. If you're using a publishing site, the Save Site as Template link is going to be hidden. However, it is still possible to save the site as a template if you hard code or if you hand craft the URL to get to the Save Site as Template page. In all cases where the Save Site as Template link is hidden, the resulting template is not going to work correctly, and you shouldn't use it within SharePoint itself. However, it can be a very handy way to extract things from a publishing site. And I have a whole series of posts on my blog that describe how to extract information from a publishing site that you saved as a template. In both cases, what you get is a solution package, like I said, that you can import into Visual Studio. Now, right now, we're not going to go through that process of importing the solution into Visual Studio, but what we are going to do is save a site as a template and then use it to create a new site. So here I have this little site that has this simple invoicing solution on it, and I'd like to share that with my friends. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Site Settings page, and under Site Actions, I'm going to select Save Site as Template. Now, let me say this again. If you have the publishing features enabled, this link will not display. It'll be hidden. All right, so I go ahead and click this, and I need to give this template a file name, so we're going to call this invoicing. Call this the invoicing site. And we'll give the template a name. And I'm going to include content just so we can see that everything worked, and I will choose OK. Once the operation completes, I see the operation completed successfully screen, and I can go to the solution gallery where I see my invoicing site available to download if I want. So I can pull this straight down to my local disk if I was going to import it into Visual Studio, which I am not going to do right now. What I am going to do is come over and scroll down to the bottom and create a new subsite. And so now there is a custom tab. There's one I created earlier when I was just goofing off. But there's my invoicing site, and we'll say this is Invoices. And we'll say this is INV. And we'll use the same permissions as the parent site, and we will also use the top link bar from the parent site just to make it easy to get back to it. And I will choose Create. And when it's done, I have a site just like the one that I just copied. So if we come up here to the URL bar, you can see that we are at /INV. And you can see up here on the top link bar that there is a subsite here. So this one's called Invoices. If we come back up to SP 2013, it looks the same because we created the site underneath the same site that we saved as a template. So just to make sure this is really clear, if I did want to share this with my friends who had their own sites, what I would do is I would go into the Solutions Gallery off of the Site Settings page. I would download the invoicing site file to my local disk, give it to my friend, and then they would come to the same spot and hit the Upload Solution button. At that point, they would browse to the file, upload it, and then click the Activate button to turn it on. And once they did that, they would be able to create their very own awesome invoicing site.